Hashtag the uniform that changed everything. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the course of your life? A seemingly small decision that led to something extraordinary? Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you've experienced one of those life-changing moments, because today's story might just touch your heart in ways you never expected. Emma rushed through the hospital corridor, her scrubs stained with evidence of the 12-hour shift she'd just completed. The emergency room had been chaos. A multi-car accident on the highway had brought in 8 patients simultaneously. Just as she was supposed to clock out, a child with severe injuries had been wheeled in, and there was no way Emma could leave. Now, glancing at her watch, she realized with horror she was already 20 minutes late for her blind date. The blind date her well-meaning best friend Sophia had been trying to arrange for months. "You need to get out more," Sophia had insisted. "You can't keep using your job as an excuse to avoid living." Emma had finally relented, but now she was regretting it. She should have cancelled when the emergency came in, but in the rush, she'd forgotten about the date entirely until it was too late. She grabbed her phone and stared at the text message containing details about the restaurant and her date, James, a single father of a 10-year-old daughter. No time to go home and change. It was either show up in scrubs or stand him up completely. The upscale Italian restaurant was only 2 blocks from the hospital. Emma paused outside, feeling completely out of place in her navy blue scrubs among the well-dressed patrons visible through the window. She smoothed her ponytail and took a deep breath. The maitre d' eyed her uniform skeptically. "Reservation? I'm meeting someone." "James Parker?" With a slight raise of his eyebrow, he led her to a corner table where a man sat alone, occasionally checking his watch. He was handsome in an understated way, warm brown eyes, slightly disheveled dark hair, and a 5 o'clock shadow that suggested he'd come straight from work too. As she approached, James looked up, his expression unreadable. "I'm so sorry I'm late," Emma said, sliding into the chair opposite him. "And I'm really sorry I wore my work uniform," she added, gesturing to her scrubs. "There was an emergency at the hospital and I didn't have time to change." For a moment, James said nothing, and Emma prepared herself for an awkward exit speech. But then his face transformed with a smile so genuine it reached all the way to his eyes. "You're a nurse?" he asked, his voice warm with something that sounded like relief. Emma nodded, confused by his reaction. "My daughter Charlotte was in the pediatric oncology ward at Memorial for almost a year," James said quietly. "Nurses like you saved her life. As far as I'm concerned, you could show up in a hazmat suit and I'd still be honored to have dinner with you." The tension in Emma's shoulders released. Is Charlotte okay now?" James's smile widened, pulling out his phone to show a picture of a beaming girl with curly hair. 3 years in remission. She's the strongest person I know." As they ordered dinner, Emma found herself sharing stories from her shifts in a way she never did on dates. Usually, men found her work depressing or uncomfortable, but James listened with genuine interest. "You know," he said as they finished their meals, "Charlotte has been asking me to start dating again. She told me she wanted me to find someone with a big heart." He looked directly at Emma. "I think she'd approve of you showing up in your scrubs." That first date turned into a second, then a third. Emma met Charlotte, who immediately showed her a collection of hospital bracelets she'd saved from her time in treatment. "Dad says you're the kind of nurse who would have made me laugh even on the bad days," Charlotte said, studying Emma with eyes that seemed too wise for her age. Emma learned that James had been raising Charlotte alone since she was 3, when his wife Lisa had walked out, unable to handle the stress of their daughter's cancer diagnosis. The treatments had been brutal: chemotherapy, radiation, a bone marrow transplant. Through it all, James had slept in hospital chairs, learned medical terminology like a second language, and never let Charlotte see him cry. "The nurses were our lifeline," James confessed one night as they sat on his porch swing after Charlotte had gone to bed. Lisa couldn't handle the hospitals, the smell, the constant beeping of machines. But the nurses, they made it bearable. They treated Charlotte like a person, not just a patient. Emma understood then why her uniform hadn't bothered him that first night. In his world, scrubs weren't just clothing, they were symbols of the people who had helped save his daughter's life. As months passed, Emma became a fixture in their small family. She taught Charlotte how to braid hair, helped with science projects, and started leaving spare clothes at James's house for the nights when emergencies kept her late. But paradise didn't last. 8 months into their relationship, Charlotte's routine blood work came back with irregularities. The cancer had returned. James fell apart in Emma's arms that night after Charlotte had fallen asleep. "I can't lose her," he sobbed. "I can't go through this again." Emma held him, her nurse's training warring with her emotions. "We'll face this together," she promised, though she knew better than to guarantee outcomes. The next year tested them all. Emma used her connections to get Charlotte into experimental treatment programs. She took night shifts so she could accompany them to daytime appointments. She learned to navigate the delicate balance between being Charlotte's nurse and being her father's partner. Some nights, when Charlotte was hospitalized, Emma would arrive after her shift still in her scrubs, and James would smile that same smile from their first date, grateful, relieved, loving. "You know," Charlotte said during one hospital stay, her hair long gone from treatments, "when Dad told me he was going on a blind date with a nurse who showed up in her uniform, I knew you were going to be special. Normal people run away from hospitals. Special people run toward them." Emma kept a journal during those dark days, writing down Charlotte's wisdom, James's quiet strength, and her own fears. Sometimes, when Charlotte was sleeping and James had gone for coffee, she would write about her growing certainty that this cobbled-together family born from tragedy and chance, was where she belonged. The treatments were harsh, but Charlotte fought with the same determination she'd shown before. Slowly, the test results improved. 6 months later, she was in remission again. On the night they received the news, after Charlotte had gone to bed, exhausted but happy, James took Emma's hands in his. 2 years ago, I was dreading a blind date, only agreeing to it because my daughter kept pushing me to find happiness again, he said. And then you walked in, wearing your scrubs, looking exhausted but somehow still beautiful, and I knew. Knew what? Emma asked. That the universe has a strange way of bringing people exactly where they need to be. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I've been carrying this around for months, waiting for the right moment. Inside was a simple ring with a sapphire the same color as hospital scrubs. I'm not asking because of what we've just been through, he said. I'm asking because I want to go through everything else with you too, the ordinary days, the quiet moments, all of it. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, unable to speak. Their wedding was small, just family and close friends in James's backyard. Charlotte, her hair growing back in soft curls, served as both flower girl and best person. During the reception, James clinked his glass for attention. I want to tell you all a story, he said. About a blind date where a nurse showed up in her work uniform, apologizing for not having time to change after saving lives. What she didn't know was that to a single dad whose daughter had been saved by people in those same uniforms, she couldn't have worn anything more perfect. Emma looked around at their guests, her colleagues from the hospital, James's friends who had supported him through Charlotte's illness, and Charlotte herself, healthy and beaming, and realized that sometimes life's most important turns come when you least expect them. To all of you watching this story, she whispered to herself, imagining sharing their journey, never underestimate how your presence, exactly as you are, might be precisely what someone else needs. As the years passed, their family grew. Emma continued nursing but transferred to oncology education, developing programs to help families navigate the terrifying world of cancer treatment. James expanded his architecture firm to specialize in healthcare facilities designed with patients and families in mind. Charlotte grew into a compassionate young woman who volunteered at the hospital where she had once been a patient. On their 5th anniversary, James presented Emma with a bound book, he had found her journals and had them professionally published, with Charlotte's illustrations accompanying the text. "Your story, our story, has already helped so many families in the oncology ward," he told her. "Your words give them hope on their darkest days." Emma ran her fingers over the cover, which featured a simple drawing of a nurse in scrubs holding hands with a man and a small girl. The title read, "The Uniform That Changed Everything." "From a blind date to a beautiful life," James said, wrapping his arms around her. "All because you didn't have time to change your clothes." Emma leaned into his embrace, thinking of that rushed evening years ago when she'd nearly cancelled their date. How different her life would have been if she had. "Sometimes," she said, "the things we apologize for turn out to be our greatest blessings." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more life-changing tales that remind us how unexpected moments can lead to extraordinary journeys. Remember, sometimes what seems like an imperfection or a mistake might be the very thing that opens the door to your greatest happiness. Share in the comments about a time when something you thought was wrong turned out to be exactly right. Life doesn't always go according to plan, sometimes it goes even better.